A smaller scales question. I claim no expertise, but I'm curious. How does the capitalist moral system feel about Enron businessmen communicating with one another, as my friends do to one another when they're killing their virtual opponents in video games, about depriving homes, in California specifically, of power?
So how do we feel about Enron guys talking among themselves about depriving California? Well, I think pretty badly. If that's what they did, I don't believe they could do that under pure capitalism. I think the only reason they could do that is, notice that all these corruption scandals happen in the most regulated businesses. What is one of the most regulated businesses in the United States? Electricity. Incredibly regulated. The only reason we had a power crisis in California is because of regulation. And it's simple, again, economics 101. You, as an individual payer of electricity, had your rates capped by the government. You weren't allowed, the utility couldn't charge you more, I don't know, $2 or whatever, right? But the electric utility had to buy their electricity from somewhere else, because they actually couldn't own, the people who delivered the electricity to you couldn't own the manufacturing of the electricity because of regulation. They had to buy it from somebody else. But that was a variable rate. So when rates went up for the electrical utility, they wanted to increase our rates because their costs were going up, and the the regulators said, no, you can't. So all the electric power companies in California were losing huge amounts of money. Now, what happens when you're buying cheap electricity? Do you use more of it or less of it? More of it. What happens to electric utility when it's paying a lot of money for electricity? Is it going to buy more or less of it? Less. So you got less coming in, more being demanded. What do you get? Shortages. Now, were there people in Enron taking advantage of this situation to manipulate it? Absolutely. But the situation wasn't created by them. The situation was created by government regulations. In a free market, you don't get these situations. It doesn't happen. You don't get shortages. Where do you get shortages? In the Soviet Union, you get shortages. Lines out of shops because they either bake too little bread, or sometimes there's too much bread and no, I don't know, toilet paper. True, I mean, anybody who's lived under socialism knows this, that bureaucrats cannot decide on supply and demand and quantities. It's always mismatched. That's exactly what happened with electricity in California. If you had a free market, they would match. How would they match? When prices of what's called wholesale electricity went up, what would happen to retail prices? They would go up. What would happen to your consumption of electricity? Would go down. So there wouldn't be this mismatch of supply and demand. You wouldn't have shortages. You would just be using less electricity. You'd be conserving. But out of free will and out of an economic self-interest, i.e. not to spend more money than you could afford to buy electricity. So the real problem with the electricity crisis was regulation, not the guys at Enron. Now, did people at Enron commit, do things that were immoral? Probably. Did they commit fraud? If they did, they should go to jail. I'm not against taking crooks and putting them in jail. I think that fraud should be punished. Are some American businessmen immoral? Absolutely. Some American students are immoral. Most American professors are immoral. So, so a few businessmen in corporate America are immoral. Big deal. I mean, if they're crooks, then put them in jail. But I mean, I'm against immorality in all those fields. I want businessmen to be moral. I want students to be moral. Professors to be moral. But don't blame the electricity crisis on Enron. They took advantage of it, but they didn't cause it. Your government, your local bureaucrat in Sacramento caused it. And the so-called deregulation or re-regulation of electricity rates caused the electricity crisis, and that was in 1996 or 7.